Venezuelan electoral authorities announced that the parliamentary elections will be held on December 6. The Cuban medical brigade that helped fight the novel coronavirus in Andorra for 3 months returned home this Wednesday. Kenyan health authorities reported the highest number of new positive COVID-19 cases since the beginning of the outbreak this Wednesday. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Venezuela, where this Wednesday the National Electoral Council announced that the parliamentary elections will be held on December 6. Council President Indira Alfonso Isigiri officially announced the date after confirming the approval of the electoral schedule by all council members. She also indicated that they expect the participation of some 89 political organisations to dispute the seats of the National Assembly, after explaining that the number of seats was increased from 167 to 277 to affect population growth, as Venezuela now has over 32 million inhabitants. In addition, the Electoral Council President offered details on the participation of different political organisations in the upcoming parliamentary elections.
It is important to highlight that in these parliamentary elections we will see a considerably broader participation of political organizations. Today we have 29 registered national political organizations, 6 organizations of indigenous people and communities, and 53 regional parties, for a total of 89 political organizations legally registered and fully enabled to participate in the upcoming electoral process.
And during a press conference, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called for the mass turnout of Venezuelans in the December parliamentary elections.
The National Electoral Council has announced that all the scientific and medical measures for the biosecurity of the Electoral Act of December 6 will be taken. It will be a good competition. Democracy enriches our country. It strengthens the spirit of peace. So I am calling on all Venezuelans to start preparing to participate in the electoral process for the National Assembly, to be ready to vote en masse on December 6, 2020.
Turkish and Venezuelan authorities reached an agreement on commercial development this Wednesday. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza noted on Twitter that the agreement was achieved on the basis of mutual respect and the complementarity of the two countries' economies. Arreaza also stressed that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who signed an economic commercial agreement in 2017, have accomplished the agreed goals despite the difficulties. The commercial development agreement will enter into force in August this year and includes fixed import and export tariffs. Venezuelan Vice President for Communications Jorge Rodriguez offered an update on COVID-19 figures on Wednesday. Rodriguez reported 230 new coronavirus cases and 3 deaths in the last 24 hours. 201 of the new cases were locally transmitted, while 29 were imported cases, of which 16 came from Colombia, 11 from Brazil, 1 from Bolivia and 1 from Peru. Venezuela's COVID-19 figures now stand at more than 5,000 cases and 51 deaths. Uruguayan Foreign Minister Ernesto Talvi announced his resignation on Wednesday. In his letter to Uruguayan President Luis Lacalle, Talvi said he intended to remain in office until the end of the year in order to conduct pending negotiations and to chair Uruguay's rotating presidency of Mercosur. Talvi's move had been expected after he announced his intention last month to devote more time to his Ciudadanos political party, one of 5 in Uruguay's governing coalition. Meanwhile, among government figures, Minister Talvi enjoys an approval rating of 65%, as he led the repatriation program and humanitarian assistance response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Uruguayan ambassador to Spain, Francisco Bustillo, is set to take his place. Peruvian authorities eased COVID-19 restrictions on Wednesday while reporting 3,200 new cases. Peruvians have resumed social and economic activities after President Martin Vizcarra announced the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions on Tuesday. Public transport, food markets and shopping centres are now allowed to operate while maintaining social distancing rules. Meanwhile, a lockdown will remain in place until the end of July in 7 regions of the country. Peruvian health authorities have reported over 288,000 coronavirus cases and more than 9,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Dominican airports and hotels reopened this Wednesday after borders were closed for more than 100 days. Tourism activity contributed 26% of the hard currency income of the Dominican Republic last year and is key to its economy. The Las Americas International Airport in Santo Domingo is gradually beginning to welcome travellers, but will operate at barely a third of its normal passenger traffic. Of the 45 to 50 daily flights that it regularly received before the COVID-19 pandemic, this July 1st saw the arrival of 14 flights from New York, Boston, Miami, Orlando, San Juan and Madrid. Hundreds of farmers and fishers across St Kitts and Nevis continue to benefit from a government stimulus package introduced in response to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As part of the comprehensive $120 million stimulus package, the St Kitts and Nevis government has invested $10 million to boost production in the agriculture sector and ensure greater food security for the country. Prime Minister Timothy Harris revealed that to date his administration has spent $4.9 million on the fishery, crop and livestock sectors, which are set to play a major role in the continued development of the Caribbean nation. This Wednesday, Barbados became the first Caribbean community member state to fly the official CARICOM flag at its government headquarters. The gesture is intended to embody the region's pursuit of collective and coordinated foreign policy across the world. Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM David Commisson announced that the official CARICOM flag would be flown at every embassy, high commission and diplomatic office of member states alongside the national flag of each member country. Moments after hoisting the flag over government headquarters, the ambassador revealed that the move was proposed by Barbadian officials at a meeting of the CARICOM Council for Foreign and Community Relations and was intended to be officially implemented on CARICOM Day on July 4th. And will project the region's united presence and image at 208 diplomatic missions across 55 countries. And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Cuban medical brigade that helped fight the novel coronavirus in Andorra for 3 months returned home this Wednesday. The team of medical professionals helped to lower the COVID-19 infection and mortality rates in the small European nation. From being the European country with the highest rate of infections per 1,000 inhabitants on their arrival, the Cuban health workers contributed to halting the spread of the virus in Andorra.
It has been a luxury to have the Cuban Medical Brigade in Andorra. We must note that our country has been seriously affected by the COVID pandemic. We have a rate of infection of 1,100 people per 100,000 inhabitants, which is similar to the rates of the most affected cities in Europe. I am not talking about countries, but rather about cities, and even so, and all thanks to what I believe are 3 aspects. 1, that people follow the guidelines of the health authority and stayed at home. 2, that the health system and certain strength. 3, the reinforcement of the health system with the arrival of the Cuban Medical Brigade. It has been seen that we have recovered control over the pandemic very fast and have successfully and significantly lowered the mortality rate. We also have offered the same opportunities to all our citizens.
And starting this Wednesday, the Latin American multimedia platform Telesur's television channel in Spanish will be available to watch 24 hours a day across Cuba. Broadcasting for 24 hours through the Cuban digital TV signal, Telesur will also see 15 uninterrupted hours of broadcasting through the analog TV signal. Telesur's expansion in Cuba guarantees efforts to continue strengthening the unity of Latin America and the Caribbean and show the political and social reality worldwide as an alternative media outlet to the mainstream. The United States has reported a new record number of COVID-19 cases at over 47,000 as the pandemic shows no signs of slowing. Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, has the details.
Thank you. For 4th day in a row, record number of cases of coronavirus in the U.S. We're talking as of today, in the last 24 hours, 47,000 cases, and this is a fourth consecutive day with record numbers. Dr. Fauci has already forecasted that if that continues at this pace, we could see 100,000 cases per day. It's absolutely necessary, according to him, to start to wear masks and to respect the social distancing. 80% of those cases has been done in the last 2 weeks, and mostly in the south and in the west. We're talking about California, Texas, we're talking Florida, we're talking Arizona, and most of the cases also has pushing the governors of each state to put a reverse according to the early reopening of the economy. 66% of the Americans believe that it has been reopened too early, and the analysts believe that was the interest of President Trump of pushing that in order to try to get re-elected. Well, now they're putting in reverse most of the cases that they're talking in terms of measures. We are closing again, they say, the governors, bars. We are reducing to half the capacity of restaurants, and everything that they could do in order to try to reverse this trend. We're talking about 37 out of the 50 states with increasing cases of coronavirus, and in general figures, as of today, we're talking around 130,000 deaths and 2.8 million cases. So most definitely the crisis is here. President Trump is not showing leadership, so much so that his rival Joe Biden is saying that he has already waved the white flag of surrendering to the virus, because most definitely we don't see him leading that situation, and most of the time appears on TV and doing some instances his Vice President Mike Pence. We'll get back to you now.
The foreign ministers of Germany and Croatia met on Wednesday as Germany assumed the EU Council presidency.
Expectations are high. We are telling everyone that we will probably not be able to solve every problem in Europe in the next 6 months. But we want to solve the most important problems, which are the basis for Europe to move quickly out of the economic through we have fallen into because of the coronavirus pandemic. And that this is done in solidarity, that we leave no one behind, because we in Europe are dependent that we are all doing well.
Russia's Central Election Commission announced on Wednesday that 77% of voters approved the amendments to the Russian constitution. The head of the Election Commission, Ella Pamfilova, reported the figure once 85% of ballots had been counted. Voter turnout was 65%. The over 200 amendments to Russia's 1993 constitution include child protection and a ban on any attempts or calls to alienate part of Russian territory. The reforms will also limit the president of the Russian Federation's mandate to 2 consecutive 6-year terms. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Number of new positive COVID-19 cases since the beginning of the outbreak in the country this Wednesday.
Tested 3,591 samples over the last 24 hours. And of these, 307 returned positive. This number now pushes our caseload of those confirmed positive to 6,673. Out of a sample size of 173,355 that we have tested thus far. Today's number consists of 289 Kenyans and 18 foreigners.
And Kenya's Chief Justice David Maraga warned on Wednesday of the collapse of the judiciary programs in the country if the government does not provide adequate funding.
What the judiciary requires is some reasonable funds to be able to run its operations. You have heard the Minister Mr. Aden, how they are being pushed by the investors to ensure that court processes are fast. Because if the court processes are not going to be fast, no investor will be interested in our country. The judiciary budget is hardly even 1% of the entire country's budget. And I was telling the CRJ to tell Treasury that Article 173, which requires that the judiciary budget be deposited in the judiciary fund as soon as the budget is read.
Burundi's new president has signalled that his government will take the coronavirus pandemic seriously after describing the virus as the country's worst enemy and announcing new screenings. President Evariste Ndayishimiye said that widespread screening and tests will be conducted wherever clusters of cases are suspected and announced that soap prices and water bills will be reduced. Burundi has confirmed 170 coronavirus cases, according to the Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention. Congolese Health Minister Jacqueline Lydia Mikolo conducted several visits to healthcare facilities in the capital Brazzaville to oversee renovation works to treat COVID-19 patients. Congolese health authorities have reported over 1,300 coronavirus cases, 855 of which remain active. Meanwhile, over 480 patients have recovered from the virus. The death toll stands at 41. King Philippe of Belgium's expression of regret over the country's brutal colonial past received mixed reactions in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In a letter that the monarch addressed to President Félix Tshisekedi on the 60th anniversary of the country's independence, King Philippe expressed remorse for the colonial acts that historians say led to the death of millions of Congolese. The remarks fell short of an outright apology. In the streets of the capital, Kinshasa, views were mixed. While some welcome the initiative, others are demanding concrete reparations. Belgian authorities are contemplating setting up a parliamentary commission to investigate the country's colonial rule, which also extended over Rwanda and Burundi. Ugandan authorities have granted access to thousands of refugees and asylum seekers in the district of Sombo as people fled from escalating violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Ugandan parliament agreed to open 2 border crossing points in order to deliver humanitarian aid amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Ugandan health authorities, in partnership with the United Nations Refugee Agency, have conducted COVID-19 tests while delivering food and shelter to those fleeing the conflict. Meanwhile, the UN agency stated that asylum seekers will be moved to refugee centres after they have completed a 14-day quarantine period.
We are not tired. We don't have much land. Our country is small, but we still allow them out of sympathy. I wish the international community also become sympathetic and help these people. These are not our problems. These are the world's problems, international problems.
We are putting, of course, accommodation, screening for COVID. As you know, it is a very special emergency. It's the first time people are crossing in the middle of the COVID situation. You need to play smart to put all in place. Screening for security, screening for COVID and Ebola. As you know, there are also some cases of Ebola in DRC. The team are doing our best to be ready.
Pakistan International Airlines Authority said on Wednesday they expect the European Union to lift the ban imposed on the company's flights. The EU decision came after Pakistani authorities suspended the licenses of over 100 pilots.
EU, as of yesterday, have informed us about their decision to suspend PI's permissions to fly into the EU member states. And initially that meant that we would not be allowed to actually operate into those territories and also not be allowed to overfly over those territories. However, there is a lot of back-channel diplomacy that is being going on since last night, and we were able to convince them that the overflying thing they have already revoked. And on the aspect of actually allowing us to operate into those countries, we have sought a special waiver for 3 days, and we expect that with the confidence building measures that PI is undertaking and the initiatives undertaken by the Foreign Office of Pakistan, we expect that the suspension would be revoked soon.
Iranian authorities have stressed that the United States is in no legal or moral position to define examples of terrorism. Iranian cabinet spokesperson Ali Rabiei also stressed that the US government has supported terrorist groups and regimes. Referring to the assassination of Iranian Major General Qasem Soleimani in Iraq, The spokesperson noted that it was a clear act of terrorism by the United States and rejected US claims that Iran sponsors terrorism. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but we finish with a music video for the song Zero Corona by a collective of popular African musicians as an example of how artists are using music to spread awareness about the pandemic. Remember, you can get all the latest news from the Global South on our website and social media. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching and enjoy the music.
Le show. Tout le monde sait qu'en Afrique on aime danser, mais rester confiné ça va aller. Fais pas espoir quand le meilleur reste à venir.